If you're an IT architect, you probably know the feeling. Your legacy CPQ system feels like a house of cards. One wrong move, one custom trigger, and the whole thing could just collapse. Well, in this explainer, we're going to lay out a real blueprint, both strategic and tactical, for moving away from that fragile setup and into the native power of Salesforce Revenue Cloud Advanced.
Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we'll dig into why those legacy systems are such a problem. Then we'll explore the architecture of Revenue Cloud Advanced, or RCA, and what makes it different. From there, we'll get practical with a phased migration plan, look at how this sets you up for the future, and finally, we'll talk about how you actually measure success. All right, first up, let's get right to the heart of it. Why even consider a move? Well, the answer usually boils down to the massive technical debt and the walls you hit with older, kind of bolted-on CPQ systems. So you really have to ask yourself this question, and be honest. Is your current system an asset that's actually helping the business move forward? Or is it a technical liability that's holding everyone back? The signs, believe me, are usually all there. Now this slide, this really shows the core of the problem. On the left, you've got the managed package approach. It's basically installed on top of Salesforce. So the data model just doesn't line up with your financial systems, your ERP. And that's what causes those maddening pricing mismatches between what sales quotes and what finance eventually invoices. But on the right, with a native platform, you're solving that at the most basic level with a single, unified data model and one pricing engine for everyone. So if the old way is broken, what's the alternative? Let's dive into how Revenue Cloud Advanced builds a much, much stronger foundation. We're going to get into the architecture and see why being native is such a complete game changer. Okay, so at its core, RCA is built around these 8 distinct modular components. But here's the key. Don't think of them as just a list of features. Think of them as building blocks, like Legos. This design means you can implement them piece by piece. For instance, you could tackle quoting and pricing first while your old billing system stays connected for a bit longer. This lets your teams run in parallel, right? The pricing folks can work on their logic while the ops team focuses on order flows. It just speeds everything up.
And this right here, this is the secret sauce for an architect. RCA has what's called a normalized object model, and that is a huge deal. Instead of one big, messy custom object, you have clean, separate records for orders, invoices, subscriptions, you name it. This model is engineered from day one to speak the same language as your financial systems. And that just drastically cuts down on painful ERP integrations and all that manual data cleanup. So the takeaway is really about this fundamental architectural shift. You see, traditional CPQ is like a guest in the Salesforce house. RCA is built into the foundation. It's headless, it's API first, which just means every single function can be called via an API. And that transforms it into this central hub for all your revenue streams, direct sales, partners, e-commerce, without all the insane customization you used to have to do.
Okay, time to get practical. How do you actually get from point A to point B? Look, a big bang migration is almost always a terrible idea. So here's a much smarter, phased roadmap for moving to RCA without bringing your entire business to a screeching halt.
We really recommend this disciplined 5-step approach. You start with a really deep assessment of what you have now, all the technical debt, all the integrations. And you absolutely must have a detailed data mapping plan because the data models are different. From there, it's a controlled pilot, then configure and integrate, validate with real users, and only then do you execute a phased go-live. And here's what that could look like in the real world. You might start with your enterprise sales team for the pilot and first go-live. Once they're stable and happy, you move on to mid-market, then maybe your partner channel. This staggered approach just takes so much risk out of the project. It lets everyone learn and adapt as you go. Now the pilot, this is probably the single most critical phase for you, the architect. This is your chance to run RCI in a sandbox, right alongside your current system. You can literally do parallel runs, compare the outputs, and make absolutely sure the pricing is identical. You validate your data map. You get early feedback. This is about proving the new architecture works before you bet the whole company on it.
And that brings us to one of the biggest strategic wins here. This whole migration, it's not just about swapping out a tool. It's a golden opportunity to simplify your architecture and finally pay down years of accumulated technical debt. And the folks at Simpless put it perfectly here. The goal should not be to just lift and shift your old, clunky processes into a new system. No way. The real victory is when you use RCA as a catalyst to fundamentally rethink and modernize how your entire revenue operation works. From an engineering standpoint, this is where it gets really fun. You get to strategically rip out all those brittle, hard-to-maintain Apex triggers and replace them with RTCS declarative tools. Instead of writing custom code for pricing, you use the pricing procedure simulation. Instead of coding complex approval chains, you use flow orchestration. This just makes the whole system so much easier for your team to maintain and scale long-term.
So what's the big architectural payoff for all that refactoring work? It's simple. A massive reduction in your technical debt and a much more agile, modern way to handle integrations. Because RCA is API-first and event-driven, it acts like a true platform. The Dynamic Revenue Orchestrator, or DRO, can kick off workflows based on real-time events. So think about it. An order gets activated. That single event can instantly trigger fulfillment, ping your ERP, and update 3 other downstream systems automatically. We're talking a world away from clunky overnight batch jobs. This is real-time automation. Okay, finally, a beautiful new architecture is great, but it's only as good as its performance. So let's talk about how you measure success, both during the rollout and after, using some really concrete benchmarks. Let's start with a hard number. That should make any architect pretty happy. The new advanced configurator is built for massive scale. We are talking sub-second response times, even on a quote that has 10,000 line items. I mean, that's the kind of performance that directly impacts sales productivity and gets users to actually adopt the system.
But performance isn't just about speed, right? Success is also measured by a huge drop in those pricing errors between quotes and invoices. It's measured by a lower order fallout rate because your fulfillment process is cleaner. And maybe most importantly, it's measured by business agility. How much faster can your business now launch a new product or a new pricing model? That's a real metric.
Which really brings us to the final question you should be asking. Moving to Revenue Cloud Advanced, it's so much more than a technical upgrade. It's a fundamental architectural decision. It's about deciding to stop patching a system that was built for yesterday's problems and choosing instead to engineer a scalable, resilient revenue platform that is truly ready for the future.